What's up, everybody? Welcome back to your favorite New York Jets subscription podcast, Badlands. I'm your host, Joe Caporoso. Saturday AM 12-pack brought to you by our good friends from Profit Exchange. Make sure you are still using promo code Badlands for a $125 no sweat first bet. Also remember, link is in the comments section. We have a tailgate for Jets Falcons from us, from Profit Exchange, from Chitty's Cheesesteaks. Take advantage of it. Come hang out. Come eat. Come drink. Going to do like 10, 12 minutes here of just Jets Raiders predictions. Back-to-back games in prime time. I'm trying to hold myself accountable, for some of these picks here. I'm pretty sure I've nailed every over-under except for one, and it's not anything that difficult. The Jets just always go under, and I will again be picking them to go under. In terms of wins and losses, I picked them to beat Buffalo. That was correct. I picked them to lose to Dallas. That was correct. Like an idiot, I picked them to beat New England, and they didn't beat New England. Picked them to lose to the Chiefs. They did. Picked them to beat Denver. They did. Picked them to lose to the Eagles. Happy to be wrong. Picked them to beat the Giants, and they did somehow, and then picked them to beat the Chargers and look like a complete idiot, and I'm still getting ripped apart in our YouTube page, where you're probably watching this, for that pick by Chargers fans, because who the hell knew there were Charger fans out there that be on a Jets podcast YouTube channel complaining about Connor and my picks. With Jets Raiders, it's very difficult watching that game, and in any world picking the Jets to not just beat the Raiders, but beat anybody ever again, because they just functionally cannot score touchdowns. They have a bottom 2 to 3 quarterback offensive coordinator duo. Their offensive line is a mess. There's going to be no Dwayne Brown in this game. Billy Turner will not play. Not that Billy Turner has been much of a solution to anything. I would guess the combination ends up being Max Mitchell at right tackle and Xavier Newman at guard. We'll see. They can maybe go about it a few other ways, but that seems to be the most likely way it will play out. Tippmann, Becton, they were solid against the Chargers. You hope that continues. Laken Tomlinson has actually kind of been okay and stabilized this year compared to last year. But this offense holistically is very bad. So if you're looking at individual stats, individual prop bets, you have to just assume the entire Jets offense is always going to run through Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson. So the opportunities are going to be there. Anything that's an over on Breece Hall carries, touches, even yards, because I know it's been a little sluggish the past few weeks, those are the ones to go after. Garrett Wilson feels like a lock for at least 4, 5, 6 catches every single week. I think most weeks you see him at over 4.5. I think, again, you're looking at Garrett Wilson, 5, 6 catches, 70, 80 yards. If the Jets do score a touchdown, God willing, he is due for one. He hasn't had one since week 2. Breece Hall feels like 20 to 25 touches, probably somewhere around 100 total yards. The Raiders' defense is really primed to be run on. I would hope that he could have a game kind of like he did against Denver. This would be the game to do that, because they don't have a lot of other options except to lean on him and hope something special happens. With Zach, this is very similar to the situation he was in the Chiefs game. If he goes out and he is as bad as he was against the Chargers, you do wonder if that's when the Jets will go ahead and make a change. Last time that happened, he played really well against the Chiefs. I don't know if he's going to have that kind of game, but your safe bet for Zach is always he's going to throw for under 200 yards. He's probably going to have 1 turnover, and he's going to have 0 to 1 touchdowns. I do like to continue to hit his rushing over, because I do think they're going to make that a point of emphasis, and it's usually like 13, 14 and a half. It feels like this is the kind of week he'll have like 20 or 30 yards rushing. Hopefully they use his legs more down in the red zone. From a matchup perspective, the Raiders got that sugar high new coach win over a very bad Giants team. We know how bad the Giants are because we watched that Jets-Giants game. And, they're smoking cigars in the locker room. They're feeling good. It's not a team that's without talent, right? Max Crosby is going to be a nightmare. He's a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. Devontae Adams is having a down year, but is still Devontae Adams. Jacoby Myers, Josh Jacobs. There's talent out there. Now, I think the Jets defense is excellent, and they'll be able to slow down whatever the Raiders throw at them. The question is, can the Jets offense find a way to generate enough points? You look at a Aiden O'Connell, Zach Wilson matchup on primetime, they can make this over under 30, and I think I would still go under. This has all the makings of a 14 to 13, 13 to 12 type game. A lot of field goals. Each team maxing out at 1 or 2 touchdowns. That's why it kind of feels to me like this has. If I'm going for a final score, I think it settles in the high 20s. It feels kind of like 15-12, 14-12, something like that. Ugly, low scoring, close. The Jets are due to grab a couple turnovers after last week, fall on a fumble, get an interception. I think that will directly set up some points for them. And it does feel a little silly, but I do think this is like a make or break game for them. They lose this game with the upcoming games against Buffalo and Miami. It's almost pack it in time. And when they had their backs against the wall in a similar way against Denver, it wasn't pretty, but they did ultimately find a way to win. Their defense made enough plays and Breece Hall made enough plays and they got it done. I think this is a similar game, although more low scoring. I think that's actually the only Jets game that ended up being an over was that Jets-Denver game. This, I think, is a similar thing. The Jets are sluggish in the first half, but the Raiders are sluggish. It's something like 7-6 at halftime, and the Jets win very ugly, very late in this game. Something like 14-13 or 14-12, and stay slightly above water for another week going into a massive game in Buffalo. I think Zach will just do enough to keep his job for another week. I think there'll be a ton of Breece Hall, who statistically will have his best game he's had in a few weeks. I think outside of Garrett Wilson, counting on anybody for offensive production is just a roll of the dice. There'll be someone, who ends up with, 3 or 4 catches. With how Lazard's playing right now, I wouldn't bet on him. Conklin generally usually ends up being the safest bet for that, although he hasn't really done much the past few weeks. But if there's ever another player that you're going to bet on for a reception over, Conklin is the safest bet. Everyone else is a total grab bag. At this point, who the hell knows what they're really doing with backup running back? They barely kind of play. Cook's 2 to 3 touches a game. Carter's really only out there on third downs and garbage time, and he really shouldn't be anymore. Gibson had a couple nice moments in that game, but I would not be touching him for any overs. We do feel due again for a Quinnen Williams sack game. I think Quinnen's been fine. I don't really get the discourse around him this year. He's drawing a ton of attention that's opening up everybody else. Every week, it's a safe bet. It feels like to bet on either Bryce Huff or Jermaine Johnson to get a sack. So if you're looking for individual guys to go after, I think Huff and Quinnen Williams, safe bet for this week. It does sound like Carl Lawson may be active because Will McDonald, unfortunately, is dealing with an ankle injury just when he was starting to show some juice. But this Jets defense has been great. So you shouldn't be shy about betting the overall under, the first half under, the Raiders team under, and the Jets team under because the Jets can't score points. So I think America is in for a gross game in primetime, and the Jets have won 4 pretty gross games this year, and I think they could win a 5th and get to 5-4, and they're going to have to because the AFC is loaded up. The path, again, might be the AFC East, which seems like a ridiculous thing to talk about after watching that 27-6 game to the Chargers, but, the Bills already have 4 losses on the board. Still need to play the Eagles, still need to play the Chiefs, still need to play the Cowboys, still have to play the Dolphins again, still have to play the Pats again, who beat them somehow, and have to play the Jets again, who also beat them. So kind of feels like the Bills are going to end with 7 or 8 losses. Miami, they're a little further out ahead. They've struggled whenever they've played quality opponents. I just don't know if they have enough quality opponents left that is going to prevent them from getting to 11 wins. And if they get to 11, I think they'll win the division. I think 10 probably does actually win the division. And in the wild card, that AFC North is just loaded up. So, your rooting guide's pretty straightforward. You're rooting for any NFC team against an AFC team. You're watching the AFC North and hoping those teams beat each other up and 2 of them kind of start falling behind the rest of the pack in some shape or form. But everyone is still kind of hovering around. The Jets kept the Chargers alive by getting beat down by them in primetime. If they lose to the Raiders, they're going to keep the Raiders alive. They beat the Raiders. It's going to be hard for them to dig out of that hole overall. And then in the South, the Titans and Colts are still kind of hanging around a little bit. Colts-Pats will be the early game Sunday. It should be a pretty gross game as the Pats, if they're smart, should be in full tank mode, but I don't know if they'll ever really embrace that. And they'll probably still grab a few more wins throughout the rest of the season. So look, would I confidently bet on the Jets to win this game with the line or money line? No, I wouldn't. The only thing I would touch in this game is the under. I would touch anything associated with Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson overs, whether it's touches, whether it's receptions, whether it's yards. That's the only places you're going to find value. And if you could bet on the Jets team sack total and the Raiders team sack total, candidly, I feel like both defenses will have somewhere between, 3 and 5 sacks each. I think this is a game for the defensive lines, not a game for the quarterbacks and the points. It'll be fun to watch Sauce and DJ Reed against Adams and Myers. I think they'll do as good as a job as they did against Keenan Allen and the Chargers. And they really shut down Justin Herbert. The Chargers won that game because of a punt return and because Zach Wilson couldn't protect the football. So if Zach Wilson can protect the football and just be a C or a C+, the Jets probably could win this game. If he's not, they'll lose and he'll probably get benched. And we don't have to have these ridiculous debates anymore about Zach Wilson on Jets Twitter, which is getting ridiculously feisty. So thank you to Profit Exchange for sponsoring the 12-pack as always. Promo code Badlands. RSVP to the tailgate December 3rd. Connor and I will be back with post-game therapy or post-game party. We'll play it by ear. We'll have something on the feed right after the game, then something else on the feed Monday. We'll have another Other Guys episode with Jake and Paul on Monday as well. As you guys have seen, there's something every day in the feed. Make sure you check out Buck the Trend from yesterday as well. Really good episode from Dan. So thank you everyone for listening. Thank you everyone for subscribing, and we will talk to you soon.